Welcome, and so glad that you returned. I hope you had a lovely week. Tonight we wrap up Farm Dreams because it's a two-part session, and so we're gonna wrap that up tonight. And so we're gonna just jump in and get started. What we're gonna do first is we're gonna do just quick introductions because there are new people, and as well as making sure that we all know each other from last week. So we're just looking for like 1 minute, so not a long period of time, but 1 minute, if you could state your name, your location, and then a detail about your farm dream that makes your heart race. And race like as in a good thing, not like as in a bad thing, but like as in you're super excited about that piece. So looking for some detail that you're willing to share about your farm dream. Like in a minute or so. So I'm just gonna call on people because it's easier than jumping around. So it's just based on who's on my screen, right? So Stephanie, would you like to go first?
Sure. And I was just trying to think of my detail.
Right.
I am Stephanie Bloomhagen. I am the Executive Director of Farms, and I live in Botany, North Dakota. And that was everything, right? And then the detail.
Mm-hmm.
I just really love selling bread to my customers at farmers market, like interacting with the customers, repeat customers, hearing them say things like, oh, this is just like the bread that my grandma used to make on the farm, or talking about that farm to table aspect that my dad grew this wheat, I milled it and baked this bread for you. So that keeps me going.
Thank you. Adam and April. And you both can share. Like, we want to hear from you both.
Okay, I'm Adam. My, I guess, farm dream for the immediate future is raising pigs and seeing what they can do with the ground. After seeing what sheep and chickens and cattle can do, I finally get a chance, hopefully next year, to raise some pigs and see what they can do.
So many dreams. It's hard to pick just one. Adam and I have a lot of ambitions. It would be nice to find a farm to call our own someday, and we would like to, yes, branch out into raising pigs. We currently raise sheep and pastured poultry. I make soap and some different things like that. Should we introduce kind of who we are to our farm? And
we'll do that in a little bit. So
okay.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks so much. So, so you'll be hearing more from Adam and April. Amber and Ross, you're up next.
Oh, hi.
Yes, you're going first, Amber.
In Gardner, North Dakota, just north of Fargo. And what makes my heart race about farming? I would say that point in the middle of the season when everything is lush and full, and for just a moment you stand there in it and think, I did this right. This season's happening and it's going well.
Great, thank you. Ross.
And I'm Ross Lockhart. So many things. Sometimes I think about what the next year will look like. When I'm reflecting upon all of the mistakes I made in the current year, I often think, what I'm going to do to be different next year, and then hopefully being able to realize those dreams in the next year and make those improvements. So yeah, that's mine.
Thank you. Paul.
Sleeping on the switch there. Paul Overby from Wolford, North Dakota. And I think looking out to what would make my heart race would be seeing the work that we've done so far in regenerative agriculture taken on and carried on forward by a younger family that would then leverage it on into the next generation.
Thank you. Michael.
Michael Mercury from Northbrook, Illinois. My wife and I used to live in North Dakota. We consider it home, but work took us elsewhere. I wasn't really sure about the dream last time, except that I wanted to work with people somehow. And then I got this wonderful idea in one of our breakout sessions about gardening as therapy. So what if we did that? The suggestion was like with older adults. And then over the week, I've been thinking, what if we did that intergenerationally? So a kind of a grandchildren type of interaction, because older adults love younger children and vice versa. So using gardening and some sort of maybe a farm venue to really promote that is my farm dream. Very excited about that.
Thank you. Mark.
Hello, my name is Mark Dolan. Our farm is out just west of Walcott, but I am down in the cities today again. I think a lot of things excite me, like most people, right? There's so many things going on. I think one of the best feelings for me is like when the nursery is full of new plants and it's just like you look out and it's just like a sea of all new green coming up. That's pretty exciting, just waiting to find their home. That's a pretty good feeling for sure.
Thank you. Morgan.
Hi guys, I'm Morgan from Deer River, Minnesota, and I run the Crystal Gardens. It used to be a urban farm company in Fargo, North Dakota, but recently I have acquired land in Northeast Minnesota. And I would say the one thing about my farm dream that gets me excited is the education aspect of telling people what microgreens are and just introducing them to it in general. It's really interesting to see everybody's palates and their reactions the first time that they taste the greens, and also to see how they implement them. So, yeah.
Thank you. David.
Hi, David Clear. Our farm's by Bisbee, North Dakota. What I look forward to every year is when our berries start flowering and we have bees floating around and stuff like that. And I just can't wait till we get our first harvest where we can actually eat some of the stuff we're producing.
Thank you. Michelle.
Okay, well, he stole my thunder, so
Man.
so obviously Bisbee, North Dakota. My better half is David. What excites me is very simply being out there in the fresh air and the sunshine after a long winter and just feeling connected to the earth and to watching the deer and the fox and all the meadowlarks that come out. Getting my hands dirty. I love what Paul said about the regenerative, because I really truly feel a passion for that. Is just reinvigorating the soil that has been ignored and damaged for so many years, and trying to pass that along to newer generations, because at my age, I'm not going to be here for a whole lot longer, and it'd be nice to leave a legacy in a much improved land.
Thanks, Michelle. Lucas.
Hey, good evening. You can all hear me. I'm Lucas, and I'm out in Bismarck, just outside of Bismarck. I would say my farm dream, or the kind of the thing that makes my heart go, I guess, is working on it with my daughters. This is the youngest one right here with me, so I'll have to go mute soon. But being able to kind of work on it with them, they are still young, so it's not a productive act, but just being able with them to do that. So it's kind of my thing.
Thank you. Leslie.
I'm Leslie Rohde from Rolla, North Dakota. I think the thing that excites me the most is probably the idea of being able to help marginalized communities, low-income communities, be able to start actually being able to grow their own healthy food, and being able to impact that change where usually low-income families lead to low-income families, unhealthy eating habits lead to unhealthy eating habits, but being able to get in there and help them break that cycle would be pretty awesome.
Thanks, Leslie. So Matt and Holly, we're introducing who we are, our name, where we're from, and then one detail that kind of makes your heart race in a good way about your farm dream. So Matthew, I'm gonna call on you first.
My name is Matt Groshon. I'm from Sabin, Minnesota. And I guess one of the big things that I like about it is I like being outside. And I feel like if you're out doing farming, you're doing something productive while enjoying the weather.
Thank you. Holly, would you introduce yourself? Oh, except you're on mute.
Oops. I'm Holly Mobby, and I'm on farm near Esmond, North Dakota. And I guess my passion is helping people see the wide variety of things that are available to grow and eat that are so tasty right here in our own state. We don't need tomatoes from Guatemala. You know, we don't need all of those other things.
Thanks, Holly. So I appreciate you all introducing yourself. Last week we did a harvest at the end of our time together. So I'm actually going to share my screen and show that to you, just so we're kind of reminded of that. Can you see my screen? Or is it just blue? No, you can see it? Okay, good. Oopsie, sorry. So I just wanted to just take a peek at this, thinking about what we had done last week. So really what I was hearing based on our harvest is that gathering with like-minded individuals is really valuable. Community connection is important and necessary. Quality of life can be so much more important than money. Conventional farming might have answers to the questions that were raised, and there's a lot of unknowns in local farming, and we're going to find our way through that. Things are returning to the past. We're growing food instead of buying it, and farming is that never-ending journey. So those were some of those insights that that you all shared last week as we ended our time together, and just wanted to say that out loud again. Love the love that's happening here on the screen with Zoom. And so know that at the end of this time together tonight, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do a quick harvest. And so think about those things that are sort of jumping out at you that you want to remember going forth, when our time is up together. So last week we also talked about our farm dream. We shared some goals associated with that dream. We got to hear from Jen Skoog about financial aspects of farming. So that's what we did last week. This week we're going to hear from multiple farmers. We're going to be able to ask them some questions just like we did last week. And then we're also going to learn about the Farm Beginnings program. So this is kind of that feeder into that. So you're getting just a little taste of what you would be doing in a much more in-depth way for Farm Beginnings. And so you're going to hear Stephanie's going to share a little bit about that towards the end of our time together. So that's where we're going today. So the first thing we're going to do is actually we're going to hear from Ross and Amber. So the title of this section is called Hold Steady Amid Challenges. So I'm sure none of you have had any challenges, so it might not be applicable, but I feel like there might be a few. So we're going to hear from Amber and Ross. So I'd love for you to, go a little bit more in depth of introducing yourselves, Amber and Ross. Then I have a few questions that I can certainly get us started with. But know that if you all have questions for Amber and Ross, why don't you use the chat function and bop your questions in there, and we will get to as many questions that we can tonight. Okay. So our first panel discussion with farmers is with Amber and Ross. So I'm going to turn it over to you both.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you all and to have a chance to share some of our experiences. Just as an introduction, Amber and I run Heart and Soil Farm, which is located in Gardner, North Dakota. We're a small-scale vegetable operation. We grow for local markets in our area, primarily to the Fargo-Moorhead area. We supply to some wholesale venues, restaurants, and farmers market. We used to do a CSA program, but we've discontinued that as of 20. This was our first year not doing it. So, anything you want to add to that? So we're just going to talk. We have a few different high-level points we want to touch on when it comes to challenges in agriculture, and particular small-scale farming. So we're coming at it from the perspective of, crop producers. So we grow something in the ground. Essentially, that's where our power curve is. And so, I'm trying to, gauge the audience a little bit. I'm hearing from folks that many of you are already on farms or have been farming. So maybe these points won't necessarily be too applicable, but maybe there's some nuggets in there that you'll find useful. Learn from our mistakes, I guess. That's what I always say. So the first thing we want to start off by talking about is land. That can be your, if you don't have a piece of ground to grow on, that's a challenge, right? If you're wanting to farm. So our message is, if you don't have land and you're looking for land, what does that process look like? And that can be difficult. For us, it was pretty challenging. Actually, well, in some ways it was, we had the good fortune of having a piece of land when we first started out. We didn't own the land, so we were renting it. And it was not family land, but it was a close neighbor that we were able to farm on for a few years when we first got started, and kind of get our business established. What I would recommend, in that situation, is to make sure you have something in writing, and whether it's a lease agreement of some kind. I see some people laughing at that. That's not always possible. I can attest to that myself, getting a clean lease agreement in place. But whether it's family land, and your uncle's cousin used to farm, or your grandpa's brother has a farmstead or something like that, and they're happy to let you use it. Anytime you start engaging in commerce, or where you're generating revenue from that land, that's going to create some sort of conflict within your family, no matter what. I don't care how close your family is or how wonderfully you all get along. If you're generating income from that family land, you're going to want to have some sort of a lease agreement in place, so you can say that, hey, I've spelled this out, and this is what we're going to be doing here. For us, we didn't have that, so it prevented us from making a lot of the long-term investments we wanted to do in our farm. So it wasn't until 5 years into our farming careers that we were able to purchase a piece of land. and then start, making those long-term sort of investments that we always wanted to do when we had our pre-farm dreams. So that's one thing. I'll turn it over to Amber now.
Another challenge that we face, and I'm sure you all face, is time management. That's a big one, both time management on the farm, doing the day-to-day farm work, and then the idea of the balance of work and home life, which the Farm Beginnings class does a really good job looking at that holistically. How do you balance the fact that farming is a lifestyle on top of a job, and that you have a to-do list that will never end? And that was always a hard one for me. I like checking it off and then walking away feeling satisfied with the job well done, or at least finished. And that just doesn't happen with farming. And for us with the day-to-day work, we keep a lot of records, and then we can go over things during the off season and say, what did we spend a lot of time on? Did we need to be spending time there? What didn't get done that needed to get done? And how do we shift that focus the next season? Keeping in mind that you have to be flexible, because there's a fire that will happen that needs to be put out continually. And then with the family life, setting some clear boundaries for us was important, knowing that we have a young child, and so we look at it as a whole family interaction, and making sure that we are spending enough time with each other and our daughter that isn't just the farm, especially in the summertime. We don't want her to grow up hating it, because we were always working and we never did anything summery other than harvesting vegetables. So for us, really sitting down again in the off season and saying, what's important to us? What are those clear boundaries that we can and can't do? And for me, it was making sure, especially for Ross, who will work every waking moment if he's given the opportunity, these are our days off. And let's be honest, there's never really a day off, but we don't spend the majority of these days on farm tasks. And when it gets really bad, then we remove ourselves from the farm for part of that day, so you can't work on it. And making sure we have those boundaries set, so we're not upsetting our home life doing just farm work. And I think that's really important, and I would say our biggest challenge is making sure that we're doing that. I like to look at the philosophy of no one ever said at the end of their life, I wish I would have worked more. And so making sure on that day that we've been out there for 10 plus hours, that we don't repeat that every day that week. What else? Marketing and markets is another big challenge. Some people are really great at self-marketing, and a lot of your small scale business is going to be self-marketing. People want to hear a story about your farm. You're selling yourself as much as your product, and learning to get comfortable with that, and also setting boundaries with what you're comfortable with that. I know for us, when it comes to our daughter, in the beginning, we didn't think a lot about it, but now we think a lot about, we don't want her image on social media, because once it gets out there, we lose control over that. And making sure that we're very aware of what we're putting out there for our farm, and what does that reflect upon us, and making sure that we're constantly learning about new marketing things, and looking, especially for us, for free marketing and earned media as much as possible, because neither one of us really ultimately enjoy the marketing aspect of it, but making sure that we're doing as much as we need to, and putting the time in, but not spending a lot of extra time on that. And with the markets, our biggest learn over the years, over these past 9 years now, has been diversifying. never have just one stream of income with your markets. Markets fail, markets come and go. We've had stores close, pandemics where restaurants aren't ordering, and we don't know if there'll be a farmer's market. Us making a decision that we can't continue this market because it's taking up too much time and we need to focus on something else. So making sure that you've got a lot of different market avenues and doing a lot of research before you get rolling about what markets are supported in your area. And if there aren't markets that you're interested in, can you start one? Can you get together with some other people and create your own, which will give you a lot more reliability out of that market if you are directly involved with whether or not it's happening.
So can I put
Yeah.
in a couple questions? So a couple questions have popped in our chat. So wondering about CSA being profitable. Many have stopped CSAs, wondering why.
CSAs can be profitable. The best part of CSAs, I think, for the farmer is that you're getting upfront income before the season starts, which you can then use as capital to start off your season. We don't take out loans for our seasons. We utilize the money that we have either from past season or from the CSA income. And so it's sort of like a bank loan at the beginning of the season. And that is really, really helpful, especially when you're first starting out. But it is a lot of work, and you are going to put in more hours than you can probably eke value out of it, unless you can do a large enough CSA to make that work. A lot of your time on the CSA is spent on things like admin. If you have a newsletter, taking phone calls, rounding up CSA folks, recruiting people, marketing, delivering, and not a lot of time is spent growing. So it can be profitable, but it's a lot of commitment.
Yeah, we don't want to sugarcoat it. I mean, we tried it for a good, we gave it, 6 years, and it almost killed us. Like, we were, we liked it because it was, like Amber said, it offered us financing to help get our farm up and around every season.
And great people.
Yeah, and terrific customers and the best type of people who sign up for your CSA. But it's very stressful when you have to make that delivery every week, and your reputation can go down the toilet in overnight because of a bad thunderstorm or something. So you couldn't fill your share that week. So it was stressful for us. Fortunately, we had pretty good luck.
We never missed a delivery, but not all of them were great.
Yeah, sometimes you're looking around thinking, how am I going to fill these shares this week? You're out there in the garden like, well, I got some kale, but I think it's a good model, and you should always try to support that model as much as possible.
But don't put all of your eggs in the CSA basket.
Since we have a lot of different people from maybe different backgrounds, could you in one sentence say what a CSA is? I want to make sure everyone knows.
Sure. It stands for Community Supported Agriculture. And essentially, it is a subscription box of vegetables that you purchase before the season begins. And for a certain number of weeks, which is set out by the farm, you will receive vegetables weekly from that farm, and you pay an upfront cost and then get your vegetables or fruit or mix of things, whatever it is. And there are a lot of different models, but that's the basic. And then it's usually delivered to a location near you that you pick up.
Thanks,
Sorry,
Stephanie.
more than a sentence. Oops.
No, that's okay. But it's good to clarify. Sometimes we use acronyms, right? And we just make the assumption that everyone knows what that means. Next question is, how can you best organize your time during the off season?
Well, we have, or we try to do what we call retreat days, where we spend some time gathering up all of our notes and our books from the season, and start thinking of questions that we want to ask each other and talk about for the season, and gather up our thoughts. And then we sit down. Usually it ends up becoming like a week long every evening, and then we sit down and we map it out. And I wish we still had that picture. We used to put whiteboard paper all across the living room in our basement and have sections. One was for CSA, and one was for marketing, and one was for farmers market. And we would go through and kind of hash out each area that we determined we needed to talk about, and say, what do we need to do better on this year? What went really well? Do we need to do this going forward? What new things are we going to try? And then making to-do lists. Am I missing anything?
No, covered it.
We're very list oriented, so I am.
That's great. I want to follow up. So I got the impression that you are tracking your time so that's my question really, is are there ways in which you're tracking your time, or is it just this general sense of how much time you've spent on these aspects of?
Go ahead.
Well, no, I think if we were to do that, we would realize what poor business people we actually are. Because if we were to quantify our time that we spend on our farming activities, like on an hourly rate, given our experience level and our income requirements, it would be embarrassing. So one should do that, and you'll learn about that in Farm Beginnings if you take the course, which Amber and I highly recommend. But again, it's a lifestyle, it's a choice. You kind of live and breathe farming. You never really stop. Even when you're sitting at home after a long day in the combine or out in the garden, you're still like ruminating in your mind, like what do I need to do tomorrow? What's the high priority item? So you can't shut it off. We try, but we just can't.
Thank you. So next question is in regards to marketing. Can you talk about your research aspect of marketing? Did you do surveys, or what was the best way to find and learn about your customers?
Right. So target marketing is important, and I will say right off the bat, not something that we're great at. With the CSA, we did more of this. We don't do this with our farmers market and with our wholesale, because that's a simpler look at what's going well and what isn't, without necessarily having to talk directly to somebody. But the CSA, we did surveys at the end of the season. We did an overall general survey. We would ask questions and ask people to rate things, and then we would have open-ended questions. And then for a while, we asked about every single vegetable to get ratings, and that was just too much work. No one could remember the radicchio they had once at the beginning of the season unless they hated it. So we stopped doing the really in-depth for vegetable, but we would survey people every year, and then we would use those surveys to sort of guide us. Were there things that would be easier for people? Were there vegetables people wanted more of or didn't want any of? And we really did use those. That was really important. In terms of who we marketed, we did a lot of social media and marketing, and a lot of word of mouth at the farmers markets to promote the CSA. We did some flyering in the beginning up around town. We thought, who were our farmers market people that were really reliable, and where would those people be looking? And that's kind of where we started putting up our flyers. And we were going to do some postcard mailing, but we ended up not doing that. It became kind of a hassle. But we chose to do marketing that didn't require a lot of financial input. And the best marketing for CSA is repeat customers.
Yeah.
So the big thing for CSA is making sure you're getting the vast majority of your customers back. And if you're not getting it over 60% of your CSA customers back, you need to really start rethinking what you're doing and how you're marketing.
Yeah, it's hard to, if you're doing a CSA, to kind of re-educate new customers every season, because they'll inevitably be your biggest pain points throughout the season. So you know, retaining your loyal customers is critical. And I think that goes to any enterprise that you're running on your farm, is your repeat customers. And so we've really honed in on who our loyal customers are, and we try to really treat them the best. You know, we try to make sure that they're taken care of. I mean, I think that's the gold standard in customer service, which neither one of us are particularly interested in, you know, customer service by life choices, but you know, we kind of thrust ourselves into that role when we chose to be farmers and to be direct to consumer farmers. So that's just part of it. And you know, we may not like it, but it is, you know, something we do try to embrace as much as possible.
Thank you. Okay, next question is about regulations. Do you run into extra regulations by selling to restaurants that take you away from being a cottage industry?
Oh man, you really you know.
Ross loves talking about regulations.
Don't get me started on cottage food, but anyway, if you're in North Dakota, you know what's been going on in that world, so I won't go into it too much. Because we are fresh produce growers, we don't necessarily have to worry about that as much as, you know, because those products are kind of exempt from the cottage food laws, and we can sell them into any market, essentially.
Okay. And maybe it's just me, but can you just give me one sentence on what cottage industry means? Or is that not a one sentence answer?
Well, cottage foods, and maybe Holly, I will defer to Holly on this one, definitely.
Did you want me to answer that now? Or wait?
Yeah, could you?
In North Dakota, the cottage foods are defined as something that is processed, baked, or changed and altered. So thus your whole fresh produce does not fall into the cottage foods law, because it is not, you know, other than being cut out of the field or what they consider traditionally done, like taking off the outside leaves of a cabbage or something. It is not processed, manufactured, or altered. But I know the question came from Michelle, where they do jams and jellies and things like that. Those are considered cottage foods because you're taking that raw product and you're making another product with it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Holly.
It's good to have all the experts on the call, right? So next, I'm going to move to the next question. Do your CSA customers, folks from Gardner, look for you at the Red River Farmers Market?
So our CSA customers, or when we used to have them, they were from our area, so Gardner, Grandin, around us. We went up to Grand Forks and Fargo and Moorhead. And so the folks in Fargo, Moorhead would sometimes come to the market and see us or purchase extra vegetables. But if I'm getting the question right, but no one else would come from other areas.
We would, Yeah, so I mean, we weren't offended. Some of our CSA customers would also shop at the farmers market, and they would, maybe go to other stands and pick up produce that we weren't offering that week, or what have you, or wasn't in the box. And that's great. If they're that enthusiastic about local foods, then more power to them, because as long as they're supporting the movement, the larger, local food movement, that's fine. That's great.
Okay, so that might kind of have answered the next question was there competition with CSA, others who were also doing this in your area? So are you?
Not a lot of competition. There have been in our CSAs in our area. Most of them have come and gone at this point. And there is a lot more market than there are CSA growers. So it's definitely not anywhere near saturated here.
Yeah, we were really kicking ourselves this year by, we had decided to drop the CSA like late 2019 before the pandemic. And, this would have been the year to have a CSA. If you were ever going to have a CSA, 2020 would have been the best year to do it, because you would have no shortage of customers. So that was but we honestly, we didn't regret it. We still felt like we made the right choice for our operation.
Next question is how big is your farm?
Oh, how big are we?
Huge. The entire farmstead is about 13 acres, and we grow on 2 to 3, sometimes up to 4 acres of it. So not huge.
Okay. Are there any special business considerations for selling across the border in Minnesota? Do you need a license in both states?
Yeah, in Minnesota, they have different regulations. We don't technically sell in Minnesota, so we don't. I think Amber mentioned that we did our CSA drop-off in Minnesota, in Moorhead, but the money changed hands in North Dakota as far as we were concerned. So we kind of skirted around that. I'm sure if we got caught, I shouldn't be saying this is being recorded. Oh no! Oh no! What have I said? But yes, Minnesota. There are different rules in Minnesota, so you would need we would need a license to sell produce in farm agricultural products in Minnesota.
Thank you. What kind of volume do wholesalers expect? What is the threshold from retail farmer market to wholesale?
So that's really going to depend on who you're selling to. When we sell to restaurants, the volume isn't that large, and it varies a lot from week to week and product to product. When we were selling to Prairie Roots Co-op, there was a higher expectation on the volume, but it really depends on what you can do and what you can reliably deliver from week to week. The big thing is to not oversell yourself when you're dealing with wholesale. There's nothing worse than not being able to deliver something that you promised, and it kind of puts a black eye on local foods in general when that happens. And I'll let Ross talk on this a little bit too, but I also want to bring up the issue of professionalism when working with wholesale. You might have a sort of a handshake relationship with, say, a restaurant owner, but when you're working with like a grocery store or a nursing home or a school, it's really important to make sure that you are, again, things in writing whenever possible, that you are not over-promising, and that you are acting in a professional business manner, and understanding that reflects on local foods as a whole when you're interacting with people. And you having a good working relationship with someone may help the next grower down the road too, and thinking about, all of the community of growers when you do that. Okay, that's my soapbox on that.
Yeah, that's a very, you need to be able to very good at planning and projecting what kind of volumes you're going to be able to produce. Because showing up at the back door of a school or a nursing home is not going to work for their kitchen staff by saying, hey, I got these extra tomatoes this week. Do you want to buy them? So it's, if you can say, put something down and say, this is what I can produce reasonably in this time frame, that's an important thing to do. And that comes with just experience. You'll know what you're able to do after a few years of doing it, so.
And a small local restaurant probably wants your fun heirloom tomatoes and, your ugly foods, and might be fun to work with in that way, but larger establishments, especially if you're working with like schools and things like that, they need uniform produce. They don't necessarily have the training to deal with or the equipment to deal with oddly shaped and sized things. And so you also have to understand that threshold of, can I grow the kinds of produce, or do I want to grow the kinds of produce at the volume that I need to make that financially make sense for my farm.
Thank you. So next question, do you cooperate with other farmers or other enterprises in the area, whether it's in production or sales?
Yes, whenever possible.
Well, that's a long-term dream of ours to this day, is to put together a kind of cooperative model of local producers who would work together, to kind of meet some of these other institutional larger type buyers that are out there that will say that they want to buy local, support local producers, but when you get into the details of it, it oftentimes won't work for either the producer or the buyer. So when you're in more of those larger type of arrangements where you have your risk spread around a little more amongst other growers, that's positive. And so unfortunately we don't currently have a viable cooperative of producers right now, but in our area at least. But we've been certainly working on it, and with the pandemic, I think there was some added urgency to maybe start doing that a little bit more. So hopefully we can pick that up again this winter and move it forward.
Okay. With wholesale clients, how do you set pricing?
That's a great question.
Well, so it depends on how you orient your business model. And so we've always been sort of our direct to, we think of it in levels. So our direct to consumer is our best, most quantity of produce. And, if we can move the most of our product into that market channel, that's going to be at the highest margin. And so that's the way we always, the direct to consumer, restaurant, and then wholesale. Now, you may not agree with that. You may want to just turn that around. You may want to focus on wholesale as your primary market channel. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you should expect a lower profit by doing so. Your marketing costs and things like that are going to be lower for that. But anyway, so how do you set your pricing? I think it's, if you get down, for us, we try to set our pricing at the max of what we can get at the farmer's market, based on what our competitors are doing and what we believe our produce is worth. And so when we do get down to our wholesale outlets, we know it's going to be less, but it's also may not be our best produce either. So, yeah, it varies.
It's good to have conversations with other people that are selling wholesale, and actually, talking to, say, if you're going with a restaurant, you can probably set a higher price, and working with them on what they can afford to pay, what they tend to pay other growers, and having a conversation back and forth about that. With larger institutional buyers, they often set that price, and so there may be less negotiating, and you definitely have to sell more quantity to make up for that lower price you're getting. So you just have to do some research, and we just kind of asked around with other growers we knew, and talked to the restaurants and things that we were working with to see what would be reasonable for them and for us.
Yeah, don't undercut yourself. I mean, that's the main thing.
Yeah, once you set that price, it's you can eke up over the years, but if you set it too low to start with, you're not going to regain that.
You have to.
They can always say no, and you can renegotiate.
So Stephanie actually put a link to a resource for pricing in our chat function. And then there's two more questions. And so that's what we kind of have time for tonight, is these two more questions. So in the first year, how do you start to estimate how much you can grow? Is it talking to other farmers, or like how do you go about figuring out how many tomatoes you're going to have?
That is a great question. So in our first year, we approached it, this was we approached this as, we were trying to establish a business venture. So that was our mindset. But we knew going into it, we didn't have a lot of experience growing vegetables for markets. And so we were kind of just trying to try it out and to find out what we could grow first and foremost, and then what the customer responded to. So if you've been in the area that you live, you're accustomed to what your potential markets are, and you maybe go to the farmer's market and you see what other producers are growing, don't just grow the exact same stuff. I mean, there's those standard crops that everyone likes and will buy, but there's only sometimes when you're growing green beans, everyone's got them at the same time, and so you're not going to make very much on those. So if you can differentiate yourself with unique or interesting products, that's maybe something to consider. I wouldn't go crazy with that model, because people will also reject interesting things because they're not familiar with them, which we've also learned in our many years of experience. Like Amber said, radicchio. No one knows what that is. Or fingerling potatoes. Sorry. Oh, sorry.
So our first year was really, we decided we're just going to go to a farmer's market. We're not going to try a CSA that first year. We're not going to commit to anything. And we're going to find out, what do we like to grow? What can we grow in our area? What are we good at growing, and what do people want? And then after that first year, we decided, okay, this is what we're going to do. In terms of how much to grow, that is still like amazing guesswork sometimes. There are some models out there that you can use that can map it out for you on spreadsheets. I think Johnny's has some, Johnny's Seeds. But for us, we like to think of, here's how much we think we'll need, and then we're going to plant probably a good 20% more than that, because we realize there's what we call the nature tax. There's going to be pests or weather, or something's going to happen, or we just get busy and we couldn't get to part of something and it overgrew, whatever. And so, saying, how much do I think we need for this, then plant more. And you can always figure out what to do with the rest of it or donate it, but just always have a little bit extra of something in case you don't quite make that mark. Does that help?
So our last question for you both is, do you use high tunnels to extend your growing season?
We do have one high tunnel, which we use. I would like to say we use it more for season extension than we do. We found, especially in the fall here, except for this year, it's just snowed and frozen for like the beginning of October, and that's it. And so our season extension adventure is over, as is everything else in the field. So for us, the high tunnel has really been about getting produce to market before anybody else. Like Ross was saying with the green beans, with tomatoes, if you can get your tomatoes to market a couple weeks before anybody else, you get to set your price on that, and you get to sell more tomatoes. Because once everyone has tomatoes, that price goes down, demand goes down, which is funny but true. So we like to use our high tunnel for making sure that we are getting products to market as quickly as we can.
Well, I think I can speak for all of us. Thank you so much, Amber and Ross, for your willingness to take all the questions, even the really hard ones. So thank you for that.